Welcome, Om Shanti. I just wanted to talk to you for a moment about languaging. Really, this basics course is here to ensure that your languaging is clear and makes sense and is effective. The difference in how we present, right, with our language, how we instruct or present an asana, right, will affect the student greatly. There's so many ways we could communicate, right, to a student to move their body. It's important that we choose a way that's effective and promotes a sense of well-being in the student. So you could say, for instance, put your hands over there and spread your fingers, versus place your hand near the edge of the mat, spread your fingers wide, and feel your palm on the ground. So both will work. If you point, I'm sure the hand would get there, but they have a very different feel. So another example would be step your right foot back, press it into the ground, versus step your right foot back, press the outside edge of your foot into the ground, spread your toes. You know what I mean? There's different ways to actually present getting that right foot back. So that's what we're looking for. Here's a few basic, this is in written format as well, but here we have a few basic ways for you to think about languaging. So we have volume or tone. Our voice should be at a volume level that the student can hear clearly, but not so loud it's distracting or startling or unpleasant in some way. Our tone should be consistent, and that we use the most clear and pleasant tone that possible so that the student, right, can really take in what we're saying. So examples I've heard just taking yoga classes, some people yell, they're too loud or have an unpleasant sort of tone while they're speaking. So usually when I'm teaching, I'll be like, raise your right hand alongside your ear, take a breath in, right? Very just clear and basic, not a lot of extra words if I can avoid it. And the tone is as pleasant as I can make it. Speed is the second thing. So delivery should be fast enough that the student isn't waiting for the next word while in a pose, because that could take forever and they could be holding a pose too long. But too fast and the student won't be able to process the words. So if you've watched my other videos, I'm a fast talker, so this is something I have to think about when I'm actually teaching a student in front of me. So I will slow down my speech and say, place your hand near the edge of the mat at that speed, versus place your hand at the edge of the mat, right? That works, but it might be too fast for some students to really take in. If you go too slow, place your hand at the edge of the mat, right? People start to get frustrated because they're getting annoyed waiting for the next instruction. So it has to come fast enough for them to hear. Next would be using appropriate pauses before communicating your next idea. So bring your right foot back, right? Pause, extend your arms alongside your ears for warrior one. So the way we wouldn't really want to do it is bring your right foot back and extend your arm alongside your ears. They're two different ideas, and without the pause, the person's not going to be able to take in the information. So just be mindful when you're doing your sequences, when you're doing your sequence and you're sending them into us, bring your right foot back, pause, bring your arms alongside your ears. Nice and clear. Fourth would be using as few words as possible. So just basically be economical. We all have our ums and buts, and you hear me in these videos doing that as well. But try not to use lots of flowery extra words. So an example would be, a good way would be, reach your arms up alongside your ears. Nice and clear. Reach for the sky with your hands. Nice and clear. Too much would probably be reach your arms up alongside your ears and reach for the sky like you're reaching for the sun that you've loved your whole life. Like this kind of inspiring language. It might seem like a nice idea, and possibly in certain yoga class contexts that might be fun. In a yoga therapy context, you're trying to give just precise, clear instructions. Just try to stay away from that and be economic. Fifth would be communicating a sense of calm in your voice. So at its core, yoga is about opening yourself up to your natural bliss. So you wouldn't want to get in the way of that for someone. But the main thing is to stay calm. So that requires you to take a breath, feel your breath moving in your body. And if you're calm, then your voice is going to be calm. So it's okay to get a little bit strident if you're trying to really give somebody a clear idea, but you wouldn't want to sound nervous and jittery, because then you're going to make them nervous and jittery. So if you hear yourself doing that, maybe to do a little practice teaching, right? And think, I take a breath, raise your arms alongside your ears, nice and calm. As opposed to like talking, for instance, raise your arm alongside your ears, then it gets a little tense for that. So nice and calm. And then finally, you want to give really clear and relevant instructions. So I know that should be obvious, but a lot of times we start when we're not sure of what we're doing, we start to fill the space. So you want to give nice directive instructions. And if you see your instructions aren't working, then you need to say it in a different way, but clear way. So that would be raise your arms alongside your ears, reach your hands towards the sky and spread your fingers. You might need another piece of language, right, to get the person where you're going. So make sure you're clear and short and sweet and economical, like we said before, and make sure what you're saying is very, very relevant. So there's some styles of yoga that have odd languaging that's been handed down. So I would just encourage you to use clear, modern languaging when you're giving it to someone. So these are the main areas we need to pay attention. And if you master these areas and you're able to do these in your videos, I'm convinced that you'll be able to do them probably for the rest of your life. It really just takes a moment, and this basics program is your moment of really thinking about how to do that. I wanted to talk to you about sequencing. So there's a lot of ways humans can move and breathe. And in just the yoga traditions, there's so many different ways people teach asana, the physical part of yoga. None of these are necessarily better than others. It's really more about what's more appropriate for any individual. So that said, there's some basic concepts that any yoga teacher or therapist should know in order to be able to instruct and sequence clearly for their clients. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. If we were leading a class, we'd have like kind of template to work off of. And one of the more basic ones would be warm-up poses, standing poses, poses on the abdomen, seated poses, and then poses on the back. Generally, it moves people from a more heightened state to a more relaxed state. So that's often on yoga teachers' mind. But let's look at each one of those real briefly. So you have warm-up poses. They're designed to warm the body, lubricate the joints, and prepare the body for the more demanding work of harder poses. It's not really advised, right, to bear weight on joints that aren't warm yet. That's where you get injured. Likewise, you wouldn't really want to stretch joints right before they're warmed because they could tear and get injured as well. So it's important to do some sort of warm-up sequences. Examples of that would be like cat-cow or some really basic sun salutes where you're starting to get the heart rate to move and blood and lymph to move throughout the body. So those are warm-up poses. And then generally what you'd move into is standing poses. They're poses on the feet. They require more lower body strength generally. And they will strengthen and stretch muscles across the body in different ways. But they're just more generally focused on the feet, legs, hip, and back, which are our biggest muscles. And also in standing poses, you'd have your balancing poses like tree pose or Ardha Chandrasana. So often you'll go from those warm-ups into your standing poses. And then we move to poses on the abdomen, which are generally poses that strengthen the back of the body and or promote back bending. Right? And then maybe poses seated, which could be either forward bending poses, which stretch the back of the body. And then they include also sometimes twists and hip openers, things that open the hips. So you see we're going from more active sun salutes and strong work on the feet, and then maybe some plank or back bends, right? And then sort of slowing it down into twists and forward bends. And then we would finally have poses on the back, which can be harder. You can do back bends, lying twists, restorative poses that are more relaxing or like an active bridge. But generally, once you hit your back, you're generally moving towards, right, that lowered nervous system state. It's perfectly fine to do poses in different orders than that, but it's generally a nice template to work with. And then when you're going off of that template, you would do it for a specific reason, right? So if you had, let's say, 20 poses you wanted to teach, you would organize them in this way and sort of slot them into these categories. And as I was saying before, unless it's otherwise indicated, you're generally taking someone from a more sympathetic, awake, nervous state into a more parasympathetic, calm state. So the types of poses you pick and the order you do them promote that. So you're starting with your big standing poses and then you're ending lying down, and your nervous system is really calming down and moving you towards a more inwardly directed state. So that's what you're going for in your sequencing. And then the final thing would be that sequences should start with some clear intentions. You see in the sequence we gave you, you're sitting and breathing, right? And at the end, you're sitting and breathing again and bowing. It helps people really put the practice into a container where they can really understand what just happened to them. Intention setting in the beginning helps people like put away whatever they were thinking about and get more body focused. If you don't give the body and mind time to process, you really won't get as much benefit from the poses. So when you're working with people in a private setting, that applies as well. So you need to give them moments before and at the end of the sequence, right, that really allows them to do that, and sometimes during. When people have that experience where the practice is set between two kind of bookends, it allows them to really feel what happened to them, and the positive effects of the practice that they feel is what creates a desire for more. And that's why we continue to practice, as you probably know, because I'm sure everyone listening to this video does yoga. So without that, you might not have the motivation to practice more because you really didn't take in what it did for you. So that's just some basic ideas in sequencing. Shanti.